Hi, everybody. Joe Cioffi here. Weather in 5 days in 5 minutes, and we've got a Joe and Joe weather podcast tonight at 7:35 p.m. as this latest round of winter weather moves through the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast. We'll tell you about the advisories, the warnings, and the bitter cold that's coming out of the Midwest and Plains. All of that and more tonight on the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast at 7:35 p.m. And speaking of watches and warnings, as of 3 o'clock Eastern Time, and I suspect that they'll be updating this soon to add uh, parts of southern and central New England in the winter weather advisory, and maybe even a little bit more north in the Hudson Valley. We have advisories up from southern Connecticut, western Long Island, south and west to Virginia. And then it becomes winter storm warnings in West Virginia, Western Virginia, right down to Tennessee, into northern Alabama and northern Mississippi. Advisories wrap around that. We've got freeze warnings and freeze watches up across the very deep south and along the Gulf Coast. The light blue and the grayish blue indicative of wind chill advisories and wind chill warnings because of the bitter cold air that covers a large portion of the Midwest and the plains and down into Texas. Weather's on the quiet side in the western part of the United States. We have some winter storm watches up in parts of Washington State and in the Cascades, and also in northern parts of Idaho and northwestern Montana. And it looks like we've got some avalanche warnings up for western Wyoming down through the Wasatch in Utah. So busy on the East Coast with new snow, and maybe also busy in parts of the West with old snow. On the satellite loop, it's one of these situations where you don't have a whole lot of development here, just a lot of overrunning precipitation. And you notice there's this sort of, pretty rigid south and north line cutoffs with all of this, and the moisture is moving along inside the two red lines I've just drawn, heading on up toward the northeast. And then we've got some colder air that is coming down from some of that bitter cold air that's in the Midwest. It's sort of funneling its way down northeast to southwest with a southwest flow aloft. So you get overrunning precip. And usually in those situations, you don't get a lot of snow, although in areas in the south and parts of eastern Tennessee, for example, and points northward, for those areas, a 6 to 8 inch snowfall is considered a lot of snow, and this moisture will just continue to ride along on this boundary through the rest of the afternoon and tonight into tomorrow morning. Here's what the radar looks like, and we're starting to see some snow aloft in New Jersey. In the greener areas you see, particularly the darker green, this is where the precipitation is reaching the ground, and it becomes heavier when you get down into Tennessee, back across as you go to the west. Nashville's been in the teens in that bitter cold air, getting snow since last night, also into parts of southern and southeastern Kentucky, and then it cuts off in northern Georgia and in northern Alabama, and extends back further west into northern Mississippi. You see it back here, and then there's also some snow going on across Kansas and into Missouri. Not much really happening out in the western part of the U.S. The weather prediction folks continue to show area of 50% or greater chance for at least 2 inches from eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England. I think they have this too low down near the coastal areas. I think the probabilities of at least 2 inches are higher, especially for central and western Long Island. Perhaps not so much for southeastern New England, but they're maybe a little bit overzealous in showing a warmer look here right along the immediate coast. But the big cities, Washington, Baltimore, Philadelphia, New York City, should all break their droughts with this, because I'm thinking this should be on the order of mostly 2 to 3 inch snow amounts that we're going to see. And unfortunately, my map is resetting here, so I'll have to do it a different way. I'll just bring up the Weather Service digital forecast and from this morning, and show you what they were going for with regards to snow amounts, and you can see it here. Uh, Nothing really super crazy. You're not going to see 1 foot plus snows out of this. But you certainly have some 8 inch snowfalls, eastern Tennessee, eastern Kentucky, on up into West Virginia and portions of northwestern Virginia. And then you get into the 2 to 4 inch amounts from southern New England, across New York City, New Jersey, down to southeastern Pennsylvania, south central Pennsylvania, and into Maryland. Again, covering Washington, D.C. and Baltimore. And then, of course, the line cuts off just north of Richmond, near Richmond, Virginia, or just north of Richmond, and then cuts across the central part of the Delmarva Peninsula, and then rides up along the immediate coast of New Jersey. The forecast for the long range, for those of you who are thinking about the next weather system, which is Friday into Saturday, WPC in their long range has a 10 to 30% in the light green, and in the darker green, that is a 30 to 50% chance of at least a few inches, and that covers much of Long Island, eastern Connecticut, Rhode Island, and southeastern New England. Also, some areas up in the mountains of West Virginia into southwestern Pennsylvania, as well as along the lakefront of Lake Erie in eastern Ohio. And then as we move on into uh, well, this will be for Saturday, and for Sunday, it's mostly done. I'll just back it up and go to Friday, because Friday there's some lead snows there along the lee shores of Lake Erie from Buffalo south to just east of Cleveland, and then down through Ohio and continuing further south into Kentucky and into north central Tennessee. So I'm going to run the new NAM for you, and you can take a look at how this plays out. I've noticed that the short range models don't match up all that, have not been matching up all that well with the radars. They seem to be underplaying it just a little bit. But you see the snow advancing northward through this evening. This is at midnight tonight, where it will have been snowing in New York City for a few hours, also for Long Island and southern Connecticut, all of New Jersey, back through Pennsylvania, Maryland, northern Virginia, into West Virginia and eastern Kentucky. Then it pushes further north as we go through the overnight hours. And then tomorrow morning, I think the bulk of the accumulating snow is probably going to be done by about 7 or 8 o'clock in the big cities. The inland areas may go for a little while longer, and there's probably going to be that little purple line there is an area of sleet that's being indicated across central New Jersey, Long Island, and southern Connecticut. If that wound up being all snow, I just don't know that it would have added that much more in terms of the accumulations. The low that forms on this is sort of flat wave that develops and moves on out to the northeast. By the end of the day, it'll be mostly done, if not all done, and then we get into some of that really cold air that's been to the west, although the coldest air is actually going into the southeast and is going down into Texas. We're getting some of that, but the real brutal air is not really going to make it into the east, on the east side of the Appalachians. That's going to happen with the next weather system, and we'll give you a quick look at this as we go into the latter part of this week. So Wednesday and Thursday look to be dry. And then we're going to have, as energy swings down from the Great Lakes, we're going to see a low try to develop off the southeast coast. You see it there. This is Thursday night. This is actually 1 a.m. Friday. The low is going to run out to the east, and then we're going to have Arctic air that's going to start coming in. So that should get some snow to break out during the day on Friday. Most of this snow is sort of like, again, this sort of steady light snow. We're not seeing dark streaks of blue because the surface low is pretty far out. It may come more on the idea of getting that Arctic air coming in off the warm ocean on a northeast wind that will probably feed a steady light snow area. And I think, again, this could be another system, another round that gives a few inches. Maybe some places get 3 or 4. We're just going to keep an eye in case the low is a little slower and maybe a little bit further left, like it was showing on the models a few days ago. That could always happen where the models try and come back. But then after that, bitter cold for Friday night into Saturday in the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic states. We're going to get the cold shot of air now. The core of this cold air mass is going to come more on the east side of the Appalachians. And as fast as it goes in, it goes out. So that by Monday, we could see temperatures climbing back up into the 40s. But Friday night and the Saturday morning, it'll be single digits and low teens for lows, and I think we might see many areas during the day on Sunday not get out of the teens or maybe at best get to 20 degrees. And then we'll start to moderate on Sunday, and we're going to warm up for much of next week as the pattern relaxes a bit. There are indications after next week that a colder pattern is going to be coming back. We're just going to have to wait and see how that sets up in the coming days. So don't forget tonight we've got the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast at 7:35 p.m. Eastern Time, and we'll be talking about all of this and more. So we hope to see you then.